They weren't killed, they were recorded. When the Ottoman armies conquered a city, the wives of defeated soldiers were not buried. They were inventoried, stripped, examined, renamed, and priced. Their bodies entered the empire's ledgers as lawful property. It wasn't chaos, it was policy. The jurists called it divine justice. The accountants called it order. But for the women, it was a death that never ended. One lived through paperwork. If you value the record over the legend, stay. When the ledger closes, the bones still speak. When the smoke cleared and the banners of conquest fluttered above ruined walls, the empire's true work began. Not with swords, but with pens. The wives of fallen soldiers were gathered into city squares, herded not by soldiers, but by scribes. Their husband's blood had bought the empire new assets. Each woman was now a number. The term was sabaya, spoils of war. Ottoman law codified it into doctrine. Women captured in conquest became lawful property, sanctified through paperwork. It was not lust that drove it, but bureaucracy. The empire's jurists cited scripture. Its accountants set quotas. Every humiliation could be justified, so long as it was written down. Witnesses describe the scene with surgical precision. A physician inspects teeth and hips. A clerk calls out ages and features. A guard marks wrists with dye. The crowd watches silently as dignity becomes data. Each touch of ink erases a life. In a record from 1463, a single captured city lists 2,740 women processed within 7 days. Names entered, then struck out, replaced by numbers. Pain converted into order. Humanity into inventory. The Ottoman Empire called it nizam, order, the same word used for divine balance. But this balance was a scale that weighed flesh against faith. The women who once prayed for their husband's safe return now prayed to remain uncounted, because in the empire's arithmetic, what was recorded could also be sold. Every inspection followed the same ritual. Women stripped under the sun, skin checked for scars, eyes judged for temperament. Fair complexion fetched higher price, fertile hips, premium. It wasn't chaos, it was classification. And the clerks wrote faster than any soldier could kill. The jurists praised the system as merciful, captives protected under law. But mercy here meant paperwork, not pity. To be listed was to lose your name. To be valued was to vanish. Even faith was written into the ledger. Beside each woman's description, scribes added notes. Convertible, obedient, fit for service. A theology of control disguised as accounting. Each line item a confession of civilization's cruelty, expressed not in screams, but in penmanship. What the battlefield began, the bureaucracy perfected. The soldiers conquered cities. The scribes conquered identities. When the empire counted its treasures, it counted women among them. The archives still exist, thin sheets of paper, ink dark as dried blood. They speak of conquest with chilling calm, female, aged 19, fair, compliant. No name, no home, no trace of the life erased. This is what the Ottomans did to the wives of defeated soldiers. They were not burned, or hanged, or buried. They were transformed from women into entries, from grief into inventory. And that was worse than death, because death ends pain. Paperwork makes it eternal. When the ledger closes, the bones still speak. After the conquest came the classification. City by city, the Ottoman Empire built not just roads and mosques, but an invisible network of human accounting. Every victory fed the bureaucracy, and every bureaucracy required bodies. The wives of defeated soldiers became its fuel. They were marched from the smoking ruins toward the provincial centers. Bursa, Edirne, Constantinople, the empire's arteries of profit. Each step was logged, each breath monitored. The soldiers carried swords, but the clerks carried something far more enduring: parchment. To the empire, these women were not captives. They were entries in transit. At checkpoints, officials waited with tables and scales. Here, the human supply chain began. Soldiers delivered their captives. Administrators inspected them. Tax collectors noted their condition. A dead woman brought no revenue. A living one did. And so, pain was preserved, nurtured even, because it was profitable. The caravans moved like trade convoys. In the empire's ledgers, these routes were drawn as clean lines, distances, rest stops, taxation points. What they omitted were the corpses. Archaeologists still find anklets fused with rust along Balkan trails, small beads scattered in roadside dust, the fragments of an economy built from exhaustion. A Venetian merchant described it without understanding it. The march of captives resembled a moving market. He was right. Each mile brought a new calculation. How many survived? How many could still bear children? How many could fetch a better price in the capital? The empire's accountants turned grief into arithmetic. Every bruise, a deduction. Every beauty, a premium. The system was self-sustaining. Soldiers supplied the markets. Markets funded the soldiers. A woman's sale could pay for a cannon. A child's ransom could finance a mosque. The state's spiritual and military arms were fed by the same commerce in flesh. In imperial records, the same ink that documented pious donations also listed female assets acquired, piety and profit, bound by the same handwriting. When the captives reached the city gates, the ritual changed, not the logic. Before the mosques and palaces rose the markets, the empire's moral theatre. In Bursa's Avrat Pazara, the women's market, scribes sat behind wooden tables, their pens scratching like insects. Each woman stood before them as a column of data: age, origin, temperament, skills. If she hesitated to speak, a guard corrected her with a blow. The jurists watching nearby saw no cruelty, only compliance with procedure. This was what made Ottoman power terrifying. It didn't disguise domination. It administered it. Inside these markets, humiliation became spectacle. Buyers compared women as they might evaluate livestock, whispering about hips, posture, and teeth. A young Serbian woman fainted during inspection. Her body hit the ground before the clerk could finish his note. He didn't look up. He simply wrote, "Unfit. Transfer to labor division." The pen moved. The woman vanished. A life reduced to logistics. To be seen was to be measured. To be measured was to be owned. And yet the empire called it justice. For every sale, the state collected tax. For every tax, a prayer of thanksgiving was offered at the mosque. The ledger itself became sacred, an object of devotion where cruelty was balanced, rationalized, perfected. Even the palace participated. From these markets, the most suitable captives were sent to the imperial harem, a sanctified prison disguised as paradise. The women were washed, perfumed, renamed, and registered again. A Greek became Aisha, a Bosnian became Layla. Their histories dissolved in rosewater and ash. Language, faith, memory, stripped with the same precision as clothing. Inside the palace, silence was not punishment, it was policy. The eunuchs, themselves mutilated instruments of obedience, enforced the empire's calm. Their presence turned the harem into a paradox, a house of pleasure ruled by those who could never feel it. Every gesture, every breath was regulated. To smile at the wrong time was rebellion. To weep aloud was treason. Women learned to mimic serenity, to survive through performance. Love was rehearsed. Devotion became choreography. The empire called this refinement. Historians later called it administration. But what it truly was erasure perfected. An institution that rewrote identity until memory itself forgot to resist. The wives of fallen soldiers no longer remembered the men they once mourned. The empire had replaced grief with ritual, and ritual with routine. Yet the system required one final conversion, not of body, but of soul. In small marble chambers, clerics recited prayers over the newly renamed. The ceremony was called cleansing. The women knelt, repeating foreign words while water was poured over their heads. They called it faith, but it felt like drowning. In the empire's arithmetic, salvation was just another entry. A woman who converted was worth more than one who resisted. Her submission increased the Sultan's revenue and his righteousness. To the Ottomans, this was divine symmetry, power justified by piety. To the women, it was the moment their last refuge, faith, was taken and sold. For the clerks, it was a good day's work. For the jurists, proof of divine order. For the empire, efficiency. And for the women, the slowest kind of death. One lived under the weight of perfect handwriting. Centuries later, the cities still stand. The mosques gleam, the palaces shimmer, and the archives remain immaculate. But beneath them lies a silence heavier than stone, the silence of generations without women. In the aftermath of conquest, whole provinces became ghost lands of absence. Tax registers from the 16th century list villages with hundreds of men and almost no adult women. The ledgers describe it with chilling neutrality. Population reduced by transfer. Transfer meant captivity. Captivity meant disappearance. Across the Balkans and Anatolia, birth rates collapsed. Church records turned blank where mothers' names should be. Fathers wrote unknown beside their daughters' fates. No plague had struck. No famine had come. The empire had achieved what neither could: subtraction by policy. Archaeologists uncover it in fragments. Pottery workshops abandoned mid-firing, looms still threaded, wells filled with household relics. The evidence speaks through what is missing. A civilization amputated from its women is a body that breathes without memory. For the Ottoman state, this void was success. A conquered people with no mothers to sing, no daughters to inherit, no lineage to avenge. The weapon was not the sword, it was absence. Silence became hereditary. In the empire's theology of order, forgetting was the highest form of peace. Even when some women returned, they did not return whole. They walked home wearing foreign names, speaking foreign prayers. Their villages looked at them and saw only ghosts. They had survived, but survival itself was a kind of exile. In letters smuggled by priests, a single phrase repeats: "She came back, but not as herself." The empire had conquered not only bodies, but memory. Modern historians call it the invisible genocide, a destruction too methodical to leave corpses. The victims were consumed by paper, not fire, and their graves are shelves of parchment, not soil. Inside Istanbul's imperial archive, the ledgers still hum with the calm of bureaucracy. Thousands of entries written in perfect Ottoman calligraphy. Female, age 17. Fair. Acquired through lawful conquest. The script is graceful. The cruelty absolute. For every name erased, a record preserved. For every voice silenced, a document survives to speak its replacement. This was the empire's final victory, to make domination look like documentation. Pain turned into proof. Erasure turned into evidence. The system did not need faith, it only needed handwriting. Historians still marvel at the precision, the paper's texture, the ink's endurance. But if they listen closely, the ink whispers back. Because what the empire wrote to forget, the archive remembers forever. Every line is a confession written in the syntax of control. Every flourish of calligraphy is a scream turned elegant. This is how civilization hides its atrocities, by filing them. The bones beneath the ground and the ink upon the paper tell the same story. That empire and erasure were never opposites. They were twins. One built hot monuments. The other maintained silence. And both called it order. When the ledgers close, the mosques stand tall, the palaces gleam, the world remembers glory. But the bones remember accounting, and through them the truth endures. The Ottoman Empire did not end when its armies fell. It ended when its silence became tradition. When the ledger closes, the bones still speak.